Welcome to DPX-AI. I am Larry Vogel, and I will be your host tonight. Let's get started. Okay, welcome to DPX-AI August 31st, 2023 meeting. So I did a thing for the photo nats this last, when was it? On Monday. And they are one of the most restrictive camera clubs in San Diego County. There's so much they cannot do to their photographs. When they asked me to do this workshop, I guess I agreed to it because I had told myself in the past that I didn't know if I would do a workshop for them because I don't know what I can teach them since they can't do much. And I mean, sincerely, I mean, one of their only retouching abilities is sensor dust noise or spots. I go, you know, you got a beer can in the middle of the street, you can't take it out, you can't remove stuff. And so anyhow, when I realized that I had committed to doing the workshop for them, I sent them back an email and I said, well, since there's so many restrictions, can you guys give me a topic that you think you might enjoy? So they came up with doing the black and white workshop. ChatGPT created the title for me, Monochrome Magic. So there's AI still working in the background for me anyhow. So anyhow, it was I think it was an hour and a half presentation on black and white. And the fun thing for me is because a few years ago, DxO had done an upgrade to the Nick plugins. And I figured most people are using Silver Effects. Almost everybody I talked to is like they're using Silver Effects. I thought, why don't I turn this into a Silver Effects workshop? Plus, I quit using it a couple of years ago when DxO did an update because they had made it at that time impossible to re-edit smart filter silver, any of the Nick filters actually that you had saved out as a smart filter previously would not reopen under the new versions. And when I first got the warning saying that this version's not compatible with the new version, I sent them an email and I'm like, hey, wait a minute, are you guys telling me that I can't open up my, and this was Nick software that once they had already had it, even this wasn't the old Nick stuff. I said my Silver Effects will not open up in the newest version of Silver Effects, and they said, yeah, that's correct. And I said, well, you just now rendered hundreds of my files uneditable. I can't go back in and re-edit them now. That was the whole point of doing smart object filters and all that, or plugins. And so I asked them, do you have any plans to remedy the problem? And they said, no. I said, well, okay, great. Then I'm through using the software because I don't want to make another couple of hundred, files that I process in the next year or so, and then they upgrade again and I wouldn't be able to open it. So I thought in preparation for this workshop, or actually prior to this, when I couldn't get back into my Silver Effects, I had decided that I was going to start working on another way of doing black and white processing because I love doing it. And so I started working with using some of the luminosity masking and came across some other things that other people were doing and kind of pulled together a whole other way of processing. And I thought I would show them this old Nick smart filter problem with the new Nick, DxO problem. And so I went in and cleaned up my old versions on Photoshop and reinstalled the newest Silver Effects. Went and found one of my old images that had an earlier Silver Effects smart filter on it. Double clicked on it, went right into Silver Effects, let me process it, came back out and updated the smart filter to the new version. And I go, all right, everything's working fine now. I can't believe that they didn't make some big announcement about this. I mean, since they said they weren't going to do it. But so I guess that's the good news. If you're still using Silver Effects, it should function properly at this point. Mine did anyhow. Yeah, Judy.
Larry, we just got a new ad for they have a new, discount for the Nick filters. Mm-hmm. And in there, they list all the improvements.
Yeah.
And one of them is the smart objects.
Ah, there we go. Okay.
All right.
Almost suggested
yeah.
in parentheses.
What? Really? So yeah, it was. I'm glad to see it, but I go now. For me, the good news was is that it forced me to go to work and look at some other ideas on processing black and white, and I actually kind of the presentation that I did for them actually kind of like this new way even better, and there was some other discoveries made along the way. So I'm only going to throw them out as a teaser. If you want to know more, you're going to have to go to the YouTube channel, watch the video. And it does it, when I posted it, I put a warning on it. So warning, this is a long video. It's the full hour and a half or so presentation. But the good news is there's a fast forward button on YouTube, so you don't have to worry about it if you don't want to. So I did mention at the beginning, we've got our new AI t-shirts on. I made those from our logo that we've been using. So it's through that spring tee, whatever they're called. I'm going to send out an announcement with a link on it so you all can get to it. There's also some other things. They let you kind of put it on anything you want. Some hoodies and t-shirts. And the last one here on the right is one that I had made when we did the AI presentation at the museum. Was the I'm a Prompter AI t-shirt that I created, which was fun, mostly for fun, but I still loved having it. And it came from somebody had sent me a link to a guy that was critical about this guy on Instagram who had been posting for several months some black and white, beautiful black and white portraits that he was doing. And after getting, I don't know, 1,200 followers and 300 posts on his Instagram site, he finally decided that he would tell everybody that they were all done using Midjourney AI. He did drop them into Photoshop to do some cleanup and stuff with it. And this one guy wrote this scathing, email back to him. And in the end, he says, there's people like you who just a bunch of wannabes. You'll never be an artist. You'll never be a photographer. You're just a prompter. He said, "Oh, wait a minute! I love that. I'm a prompter." so I made the T-shirt and then wore it for our night at the museum. So that was where that came from. And I think that's kind of, and actually, I did mention this last time. This guy Phil Steel Training. I went in. I don't know how much it is now. It was like $57. The cool thing is he's doing this training course on. He calls it Synthetic Photography Masterclass. The cool thing about it is that he's added to it about, I don't know, 4 or 5 times now. New things. And he doesn't charge. He says, he just sends you an email and says, I've added some more information to the master class, and go in and check it out. And there's new videos posted, and you can go in and watch his new videos. So for me, it's been worthwhile just because it's almost, it is completely Mid-Journey focused. That's what he's invested his time in, is Mid-Journey, and I've mentioned it before. That's the program that I've primarily been using. So if you're interested, you can go to his website, or there might even be some videos online on YouTube. Might be some excerpts from this. I don't know if I don't know how long this discount was going to be available for, so I don't know if it's still there. This offer ends soon, but there's no date on it, so I don't know what the price is now. I don't think I would have paid $99. $57 I think was probably a little on the high end, until I found out that you're going to be able to continually access updates, as he adds to them. Like I said, he's done 4 or 5 additional things to them, but it has some great information, and especially for people that are interested in the Mid-Journey, and I would say that if you've been already doing it for quite a while, there might only be a couple of things in there that might be like some great aha moments. But if you're just getting started with Mid-Journey, there's some really great information to help you get started, all the way from setting up the Discord, server, and then connecting through Mid-Journey and all that. So that's all. And I'm gonna throw out one new technique that, and I don't know, Greg, I know, uses Mid-Journey quite a bit.
That is true.
Yeah. And so, and I guess because I've kind of, in preparing for the black and white workshop, I've kind of was away from Mid-Journey for a while. And when this Phil Steele thing came out with his announcement in his email, I just watched the new additional thing that he added on there today, or not today, the last few days, and so I went on today to try it out, and it's pretty interesting. I'm gonna just go ahead and start with that as a demo, and then we'll jump into the images that people sent in. Um, it's not like I don't I it's again it's like everything else that has popped up in Midjourney and everything that has popped up inside Photoshop. It's like the first kind of go round of the new thing doesn't really work real great, but it works. But it's kind of exciting to see kind of where it's headed. So, and I don't remember if I showed this last time. I actually brought in, these are some images we played with on a Monday morning a while ago, but I brought in an image. I was showing somebody, oh, here it is. So this is a stock photo image that I brought in of this girl, and then was showing how you can actually bring in your own images or stock photo images, and then you could also add prompts to it, or just ask it to take that image and create. In this case, you get 4 images, and then you can add to, and kind of move forward from that. And so I think that's kind of the cool, fun part about being able to actually use your images within Midjourney. So the new thing that's in here now, and it'll only show up on your new images unless you go back and reprocess an image. Let me get back to where I was. So the new thing is this part right here. You see it's called Vary Region. Have you seen that yet, Greg?
Yep.
Yeah, I hadn't seen it, and so here's the cool thing. So as soon as it'll only show up on images that you have. Like if I take one of these 4 and ask it to upscale, once you've upscale, you get these other options to work on it. But the Vary Region, what it allows you to do now is actually use either a marquee tool or a lasso tool directly on the image. And it was weird because the thing I wanted to do, because I think I called this girl a skateboard girl or whatever, so I actually wanted to put a skateboard in her hands, and I did like several versions of it, and none of them actually came out great. But so the way this works is you can basically, in this case, like take the marquee tool, and the one thing that they say is create, a large enough space where you're going to put this thing. It doesn't need to be, like I see a lot of people, even in Photoshop, they will use the lasso tool to try to draw a shape. And sometimes they're trying to draw the shape of the thing that they want, and it doesn't really matter. I think I saw somebody the other day was trying to do one where they wanted to put in some kelp into a photograph, underwater image, and they actually made their selection in the shape of kelp, and it did a crappy job. I couldn't figure out what they were trying to do. You really don't have to indicate that shape, and it's generally better to start with a much larger space. So once we create this space, then it says when you're ready to edit the prompt. So down below here, I can say what I want her to be holding, and I can undo that. And then also this lasso tool. The lasso tool is a little bit funky. It doesn't work like the one inside Photoshop, but as you're drawing, it starts creating, you're basically, it looks like you're still kind of doing the same thing, drawing a shape with the lasso tool, but it reveals that sort of empty pixel looking area. And you can do the same thing now as just go ahead and put in a prompt. I put this one, the last ones I was trying to see, okay, what can I get her to hold? I originally asked for holding a skateboard. And as always in any of these prompts, you can, in fact, I think I even said specific, I was trying to get more specific to see if I can force it to do a better job. So I said red skateboard. And then when it doesn't pay attention, I always assume that my horrible spelling is the reason why. So I'll go do a little search and go, am I spelling this correctly? But so once I hit the enter button, then it goes back. And the cool thing about this is when you do that space, everything else in the image is going to remain the same. So this is some of the versions that I got earlier. These are some of the stupidest looking skateboards I've ever seen. And you would think that a skateboard would be a very generic kind of an item, that there's got to be enough information that the AI has seen what a skateboard looks like. This was after a few more attempts. It's almost like got some wheels in the correct place. Here's a mess. So we'll see what it just did, or what it's doing Then I went back and asked it to do one of a baseball bat, and it's like, it doesn't even look like a baseball bat. but it was actually doing like not such a bad job on the hands. I mean, again, that's one of the great improvements over time. This actually looks like, is it quality? So it's good. So this is the one I just did, 720. Yeah, so this is the right time. So this actually looks better than a lot of the other versions I got. Any of them that they were showing the underside of the skateboard, the wheels always look a little funky, but like here the hands look horrible. Here she's missing part of her hands, so it's not real great. But again, I could keep playing with it over and over again like I did earlier. But anyhow, it's kind of an interesting idea that it's kind of working kind of like the generative fill inside Photoshop now, where you can actually, and you don't have to do this to an image that you brought in. You can do it from anything that you've even created inside Midjourney. Anything that you've upscaled will have that ability to, trying to find the command here, where we'll have the ability to drop in this the region area, and in here you can also, I mean, you can go back in and change the selection, and you can also end up changing the words. And I think the only kind of prerequisite here is that you have to make sure in your settings that you have the, I'm going to hit enter here, that you have the remix mode set, and because that allows you, when you do a remix, it allows you to change the prompt. And what I had read or heard earlier was that if you don't have remix selected, and I don't think this is a default setting, you'd have to go into your settings and make sure you pick those, so that when you're in here you can pick any of these settings that are in here to become your sort of new default, and it'll stay there until you go back in and change them again. So is there anything that you know different about it, Greg?
Yeah, there's a command that you can just type /prefer remix, and that'll turn it on or turn it off.
Okay.
It took me a while to find out that you needed, because I kept going in and trying to do things in there, and it wasn't in remix mode, and it said to put in the text, but it didn't have a block. It didn't have a text prompt, so I couldn't add to it. And then it turned remix on, and being in remix mode allows you more features in just upscaling things too. Like when you get, if you do make variations on something that you've upscaled, and you pick upscale strong, or not upscale, but very strong, it'll give you the opportunity to add prompts there too, which is, I've been using that quite a bit. That's been helpful.
Yeah, and it even does, like in this case, if let's just say I like this one of her, but I want to do like some other variations on number 2. So if I said, and because I have that already selected, so if I said let's do variations on number 2, before it will go in to do the variations, this is because that is turned on inside the settings, that even when you do an ups or a variation from any one of these, it gives you a chance to change the prompts here too. So I didn't realize that you could actually type that in at any point. So like if I took this off, and let's see if it'll actually, so if I asked it to do again, I'll just say variation on 2, now it's just going to actually do it. It doesn't give me an opportunity to rewrite the prompts, so it's already starting. I'm just going to say cancel the job. So you have to make sure that if you have that turned on, or what was the command you could say, Greg?
It was /prefer
remix. Okay. So you can also come into here, and this is also another thing that a lot of people like to try, is the latest model is version 5.2. You can come in and change it here also. You can also do it with the //v, and then you can type in a version. You can type in a version that you would prefer to use in that particular processing. So sometimes it'll give you much different results based on older versions. So some people like using the older versions also. All right. Any comments or questions about this? Or I guess the other thing too is how many other people have been playing with Midjourney yet? I hate to use the word playing. How many other people are working with Midjourney?
Good call.
It's all play.
Yeah, I know. I'm just goofing around with this. All right. Well, so again, there's so many variations on image generating programs out there. Again, Midjourney is a subscription based program. There's a lot of free versions out there, and I always find it interesting that everybody who is out there trying different versions, take the free versions, they always end up writing their review based on Midjourney. Not
Yeah.
quite as good as Midjourney, but I do like it because it's free. So you figure, when everybody uses that as sort of a milestone comparison, then might be some reason to use it or give it a try. Anyhow, it's $10 a month. Kaz just jumped in. Welcome, Kaz.
Hi, Cass.
All right, we will
Howdy,
jump.
howdy.
We will jump out of the MJ world, and so a few people did.
Listen,
Oh, go ahead, Kaz. Oh,
sorry,
Oh.
I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Okay.
I'm having a little bite to eat and listening, so I'll just back off.
Okay,
Yeah.
is it good though?
Not really.
I'm
but
sorry.
food.
could you zoom the camera in so we can get a good view? That
No, it's not that. It's not pretty.
Sorry.
It's not pretty.
So,
Anybody else have any comments or things announcements they might want to share with the group? Anything exciting happening in anybody's world? That deafening silence means no. We all live boring lives. Well, thank you for sharing this evening with us then. All right. So, as I'd sort of mentioned early on about organizing the group here, was hopefully was to be able to have not only just a place to share images that we're working on, but I also like the idea, because everything is kind of so new for a lot of people who are working with this stuff. On my Monday morning program, we talk about a lot of times about the Photoshop AI stuff that's happening within Photoshop, and there's Osea. See,
Hi, Osea.
I'm going to have to play my intro one more time when we get about 5 more people in the room. So
Always.
you all missed.
I'm in the car.
They
I'll
all
be home
missed.
shortly.
They all missed. Let's see if the intro will actually go all the way through this time. Okay, here we go.
hold on.
Welcome to DPX-AI. I am Larry Vogel, and I will be your host tonight.
What was that?
Let's get started. It was funny when I was working on this thing, I was doing the voiceover part of it, and just for some odd reason, I did the first "let's get started" didn't sound quite right, so I did it again, but I forgot to turn the old one off, and then it's like all of a sudden you get this cool kind of echo, and I go, wait a minute, this is pretty cool. I didn't know that it would actually do that. So it was sort of a accidental effect that showed up in there. So let's get started.
Is there supposed to be sound with it?
You're not hearing anything?
I haven't heard any sound.
Oh, you know.
I'm
Oh,
like Pink Floyd.
okay. Come on. So that means now. Okay, so we're gonna have to. Now I'm gonna have to really figure out my.
But are we going to have to watch it again?
No, no.
That means now. Well, no. Now you're gonna have to wait and see it on the video. There's a weird thing when I set up the go to meeting. There's like a weird button on the way in that you have to make sure you tell it that you want it to play computer audio at the same time. So yeah, apparently I forgot to push that button on the way in. So now you guys can't hear the sound. So now you're gonna have to listen to the video. Wait till next month. So, all right, let me jump back here to our.
No wonder you wanted somebody to sing.
Yes. Well, and speaking of Paul Lawrence, no matter what meeting we have, he is always the first one with images in. I'm gonna pull. Let's see if I'm
Those are all the same image,
right.
that first group.
So I'm going to let's just go ahead. So tell us what you're doing and tell us about the image, and we'll look at the variation. So, and before you move, I'll just go ahead and say, before you move forward, is that I think sometimes it's worth if you've done something and you started with a straightforward photograph, it's really great, I think, to share the the works or the pieces that got you to the end result. And especially, if you've done things and having problems, it's kind of great to see where you started from also. So if you want to, you can send in like Paul did here, the original photo to show us kind of where it started. So tell us about your guy here.
So well, I have been fairly disappointed from what I have seen and a little bit of fooling around, because AI seems to be very photographically minded.
Mm-hmm.
The idea seems to be, how can we make this look as good as a photograph? And I generally don't care about having it look as good as a photograph, so I tried to screw around with choosing some art styles to present this, and also I tried kind of backwards on another image to pull the subject out too late, but I did discover with this image that I could pull the subject out right from the top and save it as a layer. So these are just a series of images where the subject, I used the Photoshop select subject, it did, and then I would transform that. These are all mostly Dada one other
Oh, the Dolly.
style of painting.
Oh, the Dada painting. Yeah. So
This is the Dada.
so that was the Dada style that you typed in.
Exactly.
Okay.
Oh.
It's bizarre.
And then went back into Photoshop and did some cleanup. But there's some impressionist stuff here too. And also, Dave
So-
Kelly did a thing.
Let me ask you though. So
Go
about
ahead.
the character here. So you had selected the character in Photoshop and then did what with it?
On that layer, I would in the description say Dada style painting
Oh.
or impressionist style painting.
Okay.
And I would also do that with the background, so the background started to float away. And there are variations in the amount of control that I can hand over to the program and the amount that I can keep. Dave Kelly actually was kind enough to do a whole bunch of actions for that.
Yeah.
It's a pretty simple, straightforward thing to make those actions. And so also what goes on here is we get into some of those further variations where I have less control in this, and it has the program has more control.
Okay.
Interesting.
So these are all the same image. This is the same image.
And so this is using that technique where you use a partial fill and then put in the
Correct.
painting so it actually refers
Impressionist.
back to your original. Yeah.
Correct. But the first one was the only one where I pulled the subject out and worked on the subject separately,
Wow.
because I'm just starting to fool around with this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know if I'm still understanding. So you selected this guy, copied it onto a new layer,
Yes.
and then
it
did the
says
generative
select subject.
fill just on that empty. I mean, it's basically just the
Just on
person,
that layer.
and it's just the person sitting
Yes.
there. Oh, interesting.
Yeah, kind of, more or less, sort of. The background moved around a lot, but that's basically what happened.
All right.
And then, yeah.
So
And
that's
this is before I figured out that I could do that.
and this is the oil painting or whatever prompt you used.
This is, this is an impressionist one with one of the 50 or so, or 30 or so things that Dave Kelly set up. And the next one is also.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
And I may have changed the prompt slightly.
Okay.
This looks like I used a Van Gogh prompt because I really like his painting.
Sure.
So
I
go ahead, Linda.
I really like the impasto, that three-dimensional, just, almost icing on the cake thick painting look that you got with this. It's really cool.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Looks
Yeah,
like
it
it's a
really likes it.
photo of a real impasto painting. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and
So-
the interesting thing
Are
for me.
these-
Oh, go
Are
ahead.
these actions? Oh, are these actions using the generative fill, or are they using like other methods of creating the
In this particular case, they are all using the generative fill with prompts directing it to a certain painting style.
Ah, okay.
And so, and I think we talked about this one night before, but like if you were to just duplicate this layer, so now I made a selection of the entire layer, and you hit generative fill and you just said oil painting, and you hit generate, it will not even, I didn't even need to make a duplicate layer, but it will not even pay attention to your original image that's there. It's just going to give you
Right.
something that looks
Right.
like oil paint on a canvas, but it doesn't resemble your image at all. And then somebody, I mean, I've seen a couple of demos of the technique now. So there it is. It doesn't look anything like that.
Right.
So, and I'll have to remember now to try to do this in my head, because there's a couple of ways of doing it. And one that I saw, well, actually, I think it is the Dave Kelly way, but one of them is to take the image and do the same thing, make the entire selection of the entire canvas, and then you go into quick mask mode. And in the quick mask mode, you would go in and do an edit and a fill. Then this isn't the Dave Kelly way of doing it, but this is edit and fill, and you could fill it with a percentage of gray. So I wouldn't. So going into color.
And you can also do that by clicking on the color mode box down there. It'll bring up a similar thing.
Right, so that's what this is, color mode. I mean,
Yeah.
so by picking a certain value here and say okay, so what happens, oops, I gotta go okay here first, and then okay here, and so you're still in quick mask mode, and you've now filled the mask with a value of gray. And now when you turn the quick mask mode off, the assumption now is that there's nothing there, but that fill is still there, and it should show up in, it doesn't show in the channels either. So, but anyhow, while you have that selection and you've done that 50% fill, now if you do generative fill and say oil painting and hit generate, and again, you could go through all different, you could say pastel, charcoal, whatever you want. It'll generate an image based on that style. And so with that kind of percentage of a fill, and you can play with how strong it is, it then does use information from the original layer. So there he is.
There.
So the stronger or weaker that you do that fill will determine how much it does refer back to the original image or content. And again, like not so good there. Again, these are the three variations. This is interesting. He's got a tripod. So he knows he's in a DPX photo group. But yeah, you can continually generate that, but as opposed to getting just a blob of ink or oil paint on a canvas. So that's one. I'm trying to remember what Dave Kelly does different. Do you remember the mode? I mean, because if you're using the action, sometimes you lose track of how it's being done.
Yeah, well, I wanted to make less actionable action, so I went back and watched the videos again, and he's doing virtually the same thing. He does it with a curve, but
right.
if you click on whatever that little box is that goes from black to white to black, yeah,
The quick
on
mask.
one above it, on the quick mask.
Yeah,
What he does is Control A or
I've done
whatever
that.
it is on an Apple.
So
Okay,
Control
and
M.
then-
Come on. Or Command.
Right, would bring up
So
the mask.
should bring up.
Or it
No,
would
it should
bring
bring
up
up
the
curves. It's not doing it, but let me do it from
Right.
here then. So and it's not a curve adjustment layer. It's just a curve. So I don't know why my Control M's not doing it. And then from in here, he does basically that same thing. I mean, you get the same effect,
Exactly.
right?
There is one caveat there that you didn't miss, but you didn't go down low enough. If you take that down to below 50%,
Right.
when you go to complete it, Photoshop will say, "Hey, I don't have enough information."
Right.
And
actually
then you
up.
click on a button that says,
It's
"Is that
actually
what
up
it is?"
here.
Yeah, that-
So the more you get down
Yeah.
here, again, it goes just back to a solid mask. So it's like you're not even looking at the image anymore. So as you come up here, in fact, even if I go here and I
There you
say
go.
okay, and then turn off the quick mask. I didn't get the message, so maybe you're right. You get the less than 50% pixels have been selected, but it's still, they still are selected. That's the difference.
Yeah.
So same thing is, so he's using the curve to fill the space with rather than edit fill with a percentage, but it's basically doing the same thing.
Right.
Yeah. And so you can
Right.
do that again. It's like either using the curve or the fill, depending on the strength of that fill, is what generates the results that are at least using some of the content of your image. And I think
Right.
How did you turn off the quick mask without using PK?
so. Quick mask is a Photoshop function on the panel here, on the tool panel here. So that
Oh, down there.
that loads
Okay.
it. Yeah, that loads it into quick mask mode, and
It
then
melts it, and then you click it again and it unloads it.
well, so if you start,
Is it making a select?
starting from scratch, Control A to select the entire image. Go into quick mask mode. So you're in quick mask mode now. You can see the red on the layer. So I'm in quick mask mode now. And now the two ways of doing it, you could either fill the mask or you could pull up the curves. Let's see if my curve will work this time. No, my shortcut doesn't want to work. So anyhow, image adjustments, curves. And then from in here, this will change the value or how much the mask is being used. So let's see if I go below here. We'll say, okay. Yeah, it still didn't give me the warning. I think it's above, it has to be above there. So at this point now, when I turn off quick mask mode, oh, there it is. So that's when it happens.
There you go.
So when you turn off the quick mask mode, it's going to say you don't have 50% of the pixels selected. It doesn't matter. It's okay. The cool thing is if you are using the TK panel, you'll notice that when the selection has been hidden, the TK panel tells you that you do have an active selection being shown right now. So it is in a selection mode, and that's that under the 50% mode. So now let's see just what this one will generate. Let's go with a different one. We'll say watercolor. But that whole, whether you're using the curve or the fill with a certain gray value will determine, like I said, how much it's going to use the original content to mix with the medium that you're asking it to use. Oh, there you go. So it looks like it's more obligated to the original content. And when you're using the curve, anyhow, when you get below that 50% range. So it gave a more interesting face here. So, he looks like a professor. Oh, that's interesting. Look at that. That looks more like a
Does
watercolor.
it keep changing the chair?
Yes.
It adding a chair?
No, there is a chair there to begin with.
Oh, there's a chair.
Oh no, it's not
The
a chair.
bench is
It's the
gone.
rest. Yeah, the
the
chair
front
is next to a bench.
Yeah.
So it's interpreting
The
the bench
bench
as a chair. Yeah. And if you hit generate, like again, you can just keep going, generating over and over again.
It's very interesting.
Yeah, there's
So are you in beta
yes,
now, or
yeah.
okay?
Um,
Does the regular
no, there's no generative fill in the regular version yet.
okay?
So there's a few more versions. It's actually doing a pretty good job making it look like watercolor. And it's interesting. Oh, look at that. It looks like a portable chair. But it is interesting, that when you think about the old like Photoshop filters and the topaz filters and all that, I think in some ways some of these look more authentic. I mean, in terms of the what it's producing than what the old Photoshop filters did. All right.
There's a lot more variety to the texture and
Yeah.
getting the different kinds of texture in different places.
Mm-hmm.
You're right. Directions and
less ability to-
sizes.
But there's less ability to control the variety. So
Right.
I've been using both the Topaz Studio 2 and this
Yeah.
because with Studio 2, if I tell it to do an oil painting, I will then have a choice of about 12 brushes that I can choose and the size of the brush and the amount of paint that I use. And here I have the choice of doing it over and over again.
Right.
And also, I've found that if I want to change the intensity of it, I just go back and do another layer, and I can keep the original more intense layer and stack them and show some of each.
Yeah, and this is, I mean, just to
Very cool.
go back to, when I originally thought about doing this DPX-AI, I kept thinking about this idea that the more photographers, creative photographers that use the process, we're going to keep discovering more and more, really cool ideas and ways to do this. And it's already happening in such a short amount of time with the
Right.
Photoshop part of it anyhow, that there's been lots of videos that I've seen online where people are doing some really interesting stuff with it. It's only going to get, I think, more and more interesting and more amazing, the things that we can do. And so, yeah, this is pretty cool, Paul. So,
Yeah, thanks.
so your other image was this portrait.
And this is one of the first ones I did. So basically, this is just a straight.
That's real thick.
It's
Almost-
real thick,
Almost palette
but my
knife.
friend can be thick sometimes.
Yeah. But it'd be
Very
interesting, especially with you, Paul Lawrence. You have this always this excitement to play with something that goes outside of making it look like a photograph, like you said in the beginning. It's like, yeah, I don't necessarily want it to be a photograph. I want it to be something different. And the stuff that you have done with your other photographs, just in Photoshop before, is always kind of. How do I say this kindly? No, it's always out there on the edge of
Weird.
of what
Yeah.
most people are doing in terms of processing. So it'll be fun to see where you go with this, I think.
That is I love that. I just,
When I first saw this, I spoke to Barbara about it because, as most people know, Barbara does paint, and I thought, for a painter, like if I had this image and I was going to do a painting of this from this photograph, there could be some value to doing this up front to get
Yeah.
some ideas about where you're going to take it. You don't necessarily have to do it exactly like this, but I think, again, there's so much about what's going on in this AI process that could be used as inspiration for where you
Absolutely.
want to take it as a painter. So I think it's exciting to see.
it is.
All right. Thank you, Paul Lawrence. Anybody have any
Thank you.
additional comments for Paul Lawrence? This is like the goofy character, The Mask, that Jim Carrey did. It kind of reminds me of that weird character.
Blue Man Group.
Yeah, or a Blue Man Group guy. Yeah.
Reminds me of David Byrne from
There you
Talking
go.
Dead.
Yeah, yeah.
Me too. I was thinking the same thing.
There it is. Yeah. You just need to puff up the shoulders a little bit more.
Square them out.
All right. It's an odd. I mean, if you were to take that, I mean, you could work with it even more. But it'd be interesting too if you took this and then did the painting on it. But the idea, of getting rid of some of the excess stuff, so you're really more focused on this really kind of cool looking character here, and what else you could do with it. That would be, like I say, maybe using the painting technique with this also. I don't know.
Yeah, it's just the beginning.
Yeah.
I've always, again, we've talked about this before in different groups about this. I've always felt like the idea of creativity is about exploring the what if, and so many times in a group critiques, somebody in the room will just go, "What if you did this?" or "What if you did?" And it's like all of a sudden, oh, wait a minute, yeah, that could be kind of an interesting direction to go in. So I think that could be kind of why these things, I think, are so great to share these images. Miss Linda Berman. I had to look at these for a minute and see. So I'm going to put them up side by side so people can kind of see. And you've labeled them before and after, so that kind of helps.
Yeah, I just started playing with this, and so these were a couple of images I took at the Renaissance Fair earlier this spring. And the characters there are very amenable to having their photographs taken. They love it, and but there's always a lot of background stuff, so I was playing with just trying to clean up the background a little bit.
Yeah. And again, I mean, that's kind of again where one of the it's, in terms of photography and retouching, where this tool just really shines. You know, where content aware fill many times will not give you the right results because there's not enough information for it to gather and replace with. And I was mentioning the idea that content aware fill is obligated to use the pixels in your image to do the retouch, where generative fill no longer is obligated to use your pixels, but it's using the information to figure out what new pixels to create. And then this sort of again becomes that sort of big question mark, about different juried shows and clubs and things where the comment has been made, if they're not your pixels, you can't use them. And I'm like, this is such great retouching. Why would I say that you can't use this to retouch your image with? Because it does such an amazing job, and it's very realistic in the sense, right? Like, yeah, I could. Actually, I couldn't. There's not enough information here to find this background stuff that AI generated, and so I'd have to maybe go to another image and import that information in here. So it's all doable in a much harder context. But why does it necessarily have to be done the hardest way possible in order for it to be valid? I think this is a great retouch. And this one was weird when I looked at it. Any comments for Linda on this one, or? And Linda, you were saying you were just getting started. So,
Yeah.
what did you
Well,
did you have any difficulties getting to where you got to in here?
I think it works easier with landscaping and foliage than other things. I used it with the underwater photographs, and I had a heck of a time with those. Those came up with really weird things with the underwater images.
Now it did do kind of a
of the
weird thing,
girl.
like I'm imagining when you remove this guy's leg back here, it kind of messed up the sword or something. So you just took it out completely.
Oh yeah, that's right. I didn't even notice that
Yeah.
in that turbo.
And then the stick also did a weird sort of a jump, right?
Yeah.
And
Oh yeah, that's right. Oh my gosh, look at how I didn't even notice
I
that.
know, isn't that
Holy
weird?
cow.
I mean, and I didn't see it the first few times. I looked at it
Gosh.
just till now, but when I started looking at it, I'm going, oh, wait a minute, where did the sword go? And I go, oh, I can kind of guess that it probably didn't keep it.
Yeah.
But and I mentioned this before, like in one of the presentations, that there's this sort of this mentality, like, well, geez, now we don't have to learn Photoshop or all this. It's like, yeah, no, you know what? There's a bunch of techniques that we've all know how in terms of retouching, where you could still take this original image, put these two together, and use a mask to put his sword tip and all that back in, right? So
Yeah.
the retouching could become a second layer. And you could use like the same thing here where this stick kind of got messed up, which is probably in here, right? Where it probably got kind of separated somehow. But so that idea that still having to be able to access your Photoshop skills will still be important. It's not like everything goes by the wayside.
Mhm. Yeah, I was so fixated on the landscape.
I know,
so
I do the
happy with
same
way
thing.
it
It's like
I wasn't noticing anything else.
it'll take me a while to go, oh, wait a minute. I didn't notice that it just screwed something up here. Wait a minute. So,
Glad you pointed that out. Oh my gosh.
I love what happened on this, but go ahead and tell us about the image again. Renaissance.
Well, this is as shot. This is just exactly, after some, Photoshop editing, but nothing changed or taken away or anything. And then I wanted to add the bottom half. I wanted to see what it could do. And so after a couple of tries, I mean, it's not perfect, but it did a decent job, I think.
He's not perfect to
bad.
begin with, but yeah. Once I looked at the
I mean,
two
his
of
feet are a
them,
little small. I think the perspective's a little off on his feet, but other than that, I think that it did a pretty good job. With the other figures and the background and all.
Yeah.
I think it did. But
Well-
then again, I could have missed a lot of stuff too.
but there's again there's that comment about this idea that right now this stuff is in the beta version of Photoshop, and so again, if we just look at Mid-Journey, that's maybe 2 years old right now. They've been through 5 or so iterations of it, and how much better it is today by a long shot than it was right out of the gate. Right now, we're looking at the very beginnings of this process, and so and again, that can be a reason for, the earlier you get in and start learning this stuff, the better off you're going to be as this hopefully progressively gets better. I love what you did also with the blue background, because that is visually
Yeah, it's
pretty
pretty
obnoxious. So,
Eye searing.
but it's interesting as the more you look at this, there's a weird sort of foreshortening of his character, which kind of fits the whole thing
Yeah.
too. It's very strange.
That's what I thought. Yeah.
I like it.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that quirkiness kind of adds a lot more character to it, and what you've done with the background and the feeling of it now feels more like a painting.
Mm-hmm.
It's richer. The stool looks great.
Mm-hmm.
The wood, it feels old, and if you
Complete.
work it a little bit more with generative fill in different spots and some of your retouching, I think that the more character you add, even when it gets out of whack, it just feels more personal.
Mm-hmm.
I think you're going in a great direction with it.
I like to incorrectly use the term more perfect. It's more perfect. I had a friend who criticized me years ago for it, and I'm like, oh, what's wrong with saying, or more unique was the
More
word.
unique,
Yeah,
yeah.
more unique, because that was my argument back to her. She goes, there's no such thing as more unique. Either it's unique or it isn't. That's improper use. You can't say more unique. And I go, really? Can we say to form a more perfect union? Either it's perfect or it's not, isn't it? So, anyhow, I agree with what Greg said. I go, it does add something kind of unique about the character. Even in the original shot here, there's something odd about that length of his weird clothing and the orange legs and all that. Anyhow, so
Yeah, the way it's cut off. I mean, I really liked what was going on up above, but it was just cut off.
Yeah.
And so I thought, I want to make this more complete.
Yeah.
So-
Correct. It's more complete.
and it did a weird.
Linda, are you saying that
Go ahead,
it
Judy.
created those boots
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
even on this other guy,
all on its own?
his boots are really good.
Yeah.
The perspective
It had a
on
little bit
the
of
floor
go
was
on the
kind of
left, you
weird,
could
right?
see
The
the
floor
upper
does this weird perspective, which
But
is
it's part
also
of-
interesting,
Yeah,
But it's
right?
part of the room.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It kind of tilts.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think it's in keeping with the mood of the piece, because he seems to be tipsy and everything in the piece seems to be tipsy. And also, it has more texture with the bright colors gone.
Yeah.
It starts to look more realistic, if you will. I mean, these people at the Renaissance fairs are always clean.
Yeah.
And if you see a movie where everybody's clean, you say, what the hell are they doing there?
Yeah.
They've been rolling around in the pig stuff all day long. So this gives it more of a feeling of pig stuff.
But look, it's
More
even
authentic.
interesting how it did this, wrinkle in the at the knees, and
Yeah.
The wrinkles up the knee.
yeah, that's pretty incredible.
Mm-hmm.
It just needs some straw on the floor and some tobacco juice.
I don't know. I kind of like the floor. I like it. I
Yeah.
really do.
A little circled spittoon here or something, yeah. And that's kind of, I think, like what Greg was getting at, this idea that, again, you can keep, like, okay, so it generated the bottom part of the image. We can keep adding, little small interesting things here and there that continue to add to the image. Even maybe even extending the canvas left and right a little bit more, and then have
up.
room to add stuff. And
Just
It's
a
very
smidge
fun.
more at the top would also
Yeah.
help.
Yeah.
Just give his hip
yeah,
clearance.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's a little bit cramped up there.
yeah.
Yeah.
And remove the glasses from the guy on the right.
Oh, yeah. Oh, that'd be an easy fix. Yeah.
Easy.
Good suggestions.
And
Mm-hmm.
This guy over here has glasses too. He looks like who?
Yeah.
Who is that
What is-
that character that was on? He was always on Hollywood Squares. He looked like a little wine guy or something. Little.
oh yeah,
I can't remember his name.
Oh, I know who you're talking
Yeah.
about, but I don't remember.
He had that
his
little
name, yeah.
mustache and everything.
This is very fun.
Really,
Yeah.
really
Very
dating
fun.
ourselves here.
This is so fun.
And is it even legal to date yourself? I'm not sure about that.
It is, as long as you don't hold your own hand.
Aha. All right. Thanks, Linda. Those are great.
Thank you, and thanks for the suggestions.
And Mr. Paul Anderson. Now, Mr. Paul Anderson, a lot of people may or may not know what he does. So I'm going to definitely let him take an opportunity to talk about his process. And this will be the first time I've seen him, I think, using AI in conjunction with this process that he has created. So I think I'm gonna pull them all three together just so they can kind of see. Then you can talk about each one of them.
Okay, can you hear me
Yeah,
now?
that's great.
Yep.
Okay, good. I got rid of changed modes. Okay. So to start, I guess at the bottom left, I was at the Peterson Automotive Museum and shot a bunch of cars at the museum, but the backgrounds in the museum are not really amenable to what's happening in the scene. And I wanted to do my mosaic process, which you can see on the bottom right, to the car, which is a software that I've written and other processes and a couple different software tools create a multi-dimensional or multi-planar, I guess, mosaic that you can see in the bottom right. That was the goal. And so to do the background, then the top center picture I generated, I just wanted to see how this might work for these things. So I went into Firefly and put in some prompts to look at a 1940 gas or service bay interior of a gas station or something. I can't remember what the prompt was, but something like that. And I got that out. So the top center is where I started as a background. And then in the bottom, yeah. So
from that,
that's it. Yep. And then I dropped the car in. I cropped it down. I desaturated it because it was just a little too much. What came out of the AI generator, Firefly. And then there's the scene, and then I use my process and develop it into a mosaic. What's interesting here is I think that background could have been the inside of almost anything, as long as it's compatible colors and some sort of shapes to give you something interesting in the background. So we've lost all information about the service bay interior here. I could modify this thing and bring in more of those shapes too. The way this came out, they were pretty much obliterated. But I just thought it was an interesting way to generate the background.
Yeah, I do agree with. I think that it would be interesting to be able to make out, like, because I've seen some of your other mosaic images that we've seen on regular DPX nights, and we're always talking about that, how much to take apart or leave together, or more squares to show more information or less information. I mean, he has so many avenues you could take to create the final image here, but I think my feeling would be is I'd like to see a little bit more of that information in the background. And then we're always trying to decide what to do with this sort of canvas part of the image. I hear that with the light gray, I mean, does it work better with a black or a color, or I don't know.
Yeah, this one I think needs more work. Usually I try to now add some texture into that, into the far background in between the squares. And I try to bring back some more of the service station interior, reworking it. But this is where I got a few days ago.
Would you be able to bring back more of the service station if you use that as the background instead of gray? And then you still have your...
I've done that in the past. I brought back the original photograph sometimes in the background and made it really, I don't know, not obtrusive, but I've done that. In this case, I think I would change some parameters and try to bring the shapes back and have many more tiles in there and not very much gray at all.
I think it would be nice also to have a little more hint of the 356 to be, because it's a car nut. When I look at these, it's always fun to try and pick out exactly what it is, and there's not quite enough information to know that it's the Porsche for me.
So maybe then I'm successful. I'm trying to keep them mysterious. I think there's just enough of the words and the logo in the front, but
And that's true.
I could bring back the headlights a little bit. What I did bring back was the interior, so that's part of the original photograph has been put into the background.
There is a difference between mysterious and vague, and you might think about that.
Yep. That's valid. Yeah.
I see the gray almost as like a frosted glass, and there's like a digital impact going on. I think it's kind of exciting. I really like it.
Oh, okay. Huh. Let's see, I have a question for the AI experts. If Larry could go back to just the picture of the station interior. These are still looking to me a little like they're lacking in a little bit of the grit, dust on the floor, and a few oil spots, and some scratches in the walls, and smudges on those, whatever those robots are on the left. Is there ways to add those things in easily, or any comment there?
Not easily.
Well, the question always I've heard several people ask, is like, so is prompting are the prompts really that important? And it's like, well, when you start thinking about things that specific, then yeah, and it's a matter of trying to find the vocabulary for it. I think one of the most interesting ways, so you're working in Firefly. One of the most interesting things that you can do inside of Mid-Journey is sort of a reverse engineering where you can, like, if I could find an old gas station like you're talking about, I could take that image and bring it into Mid-Journey, and then they have the /describe, and under the describe mode you can drop the photo in here, and then you enter it, and it will write 4 prompts for you based on that image. And then you could just copy, and actually, as you do it, I mean, if I just, well, you know what I'll do is I'll grab your image and we'll do it with your image. That'll be interesting. So let's see.
I saw you do this.
So let me move that out of the way.
It doesn't necessarily describe things, and it doesn't generate things that are necessarily very close to what you were expecting to get. I've always found the results of doing that interesting, but not what I wanted. And you can just press the 1, 2, 3, or 4 there.
Right. It'll generate from these groups of words. So one of the interesting things that it almost always does, which always throws me, is that it finds a name that of an artist or painter or photographer or whatever, if it recognizes, it tries to it gives you a name that would generate a style. And so just as an example, I'll just go ahead and hit 1, and it will take that prompt, and I have a chance to change it if I want to. I'll just go with it as is. But yeah, like Greg's saying, sometimes it brings back completely different results. And but I found the interesting thing about this was here's the image, and then this is now calling it, and you notice it recognizes it as a gas station, an empty building with a couple of old gas stations in the style of realistic interiors, retro visuals, Goro Fujita, fine and detailed light cyan, dark amber, transport core, studio light, and then this is aspect ratio of the image. And same thing is you can go through each one of them. Old engine fuel pumps, so it's already recognizing. It thinks those are fuel pumps.
Wow.
So you kind of learn the language, and like even here, they even recognize Sony FE85 F1.4. I don't know what GM is. Cartoon realism. So it's like, yeah, I don't really want a cartoon realism, but I could maybe borrow some of the prompts from here to figure it out. These are also links, and it's weird. I don't know why that's taking so long to start, but it could be because we're online too, but I'll let it go. But these are actually links, and you can actually click and go to to a site and it will show you this person's work. I'm not going to jump out of here because I'll let it finish doing it. But sometimes I find I'll look at these links, I'll go there and I'll go, this doesn't look anything like the style of the original image that I put in there. But it's an interesting way to kind of start learning language. And I remember somebody was saying too, one of the things that you start to notice that happens a lot of times over and over again is the idea it'll describe the color palette, muted colors, light yellow and dark emerald. I mean, so it's looking at really specific kinds of colors of green, right? And looks like this one recognized it as a colorized image, mid-century gloomy metropolis. So there's all kinds of interesting details that you can pull out of these things. Wyatt's still waiting to get started.
Great comment. Yeah, thank you.
Larry,
But again, that's a mid-journey
Larry,
thing.
Yep. No, that's okay.
Can you highlight the floor and ask it to do dirty cement floor?
Yeah, so those are also
Or
other
grease-covered
possibilities. Yeah, being able to take this image in first and add, select the floor. I mean, again, I don't know. We could try it and see. And it's the same thing in here. A lot of times, we end up with goofy results too. There is an interesting thing. Well, and you're taking yours apart, but there's an interesting thing about anything that you're doing here with doing generative fill, and that is that it's kind of limited to. And since this was originally generated as I say a smart object, was generated as an AI image, it might already have a low resolution unless you resed it up. But here, I always put in this fixed size here into the marquee tool. And so if I just make a click here, that space right there is the 1024 pixel size. So a fixed size, 1024 by 1024. And that's really sort of this maximum resolution that you can expect to use. So you can see this particular image. If this was on a full scale image and you tried to replace the entire floor with something, the resolution would be way off on it. But you can see in this case, it's probably going to be able to handle it just fine. So I could jump out of here and I could probably, again, just take the lasso tool and make at least even just a quick selection of the floor. And we can just say, we'll call it a generative fill, dirty, grungy, automotive, garage. Oops, learn how to spell. Floor, and just see what happens. I mean, that's the worst case scenario. It doesn't do anything good. But yeah, I think there's ways like that idea of sort of taking an AI image and then working on it ahead of time to say, because sometimes you can spend forever trying to come up with what you're going to call. See, look at there you are, coming up with a prompt that's going to do this. I mean, you can keep messing with it and messing with it and messing with it, but bringing it into here, I'm going to get variations on this, and I could go back and say generate again and see what it comes up with. But that's a great idea, yeah, to come in here and do it. And even if that's okay, that's how much it did there, I could go, well, I would like to kind of see the floor mess everywhere, and then I could just do the same thing. And this thing, let's see if I put in a totally different prompt that's not as specific. I'll just say messy floor.
Grease.
Yeah, the other one was specific to a automotive garage floor, so it kind of made that. Yeah, but you could add grease, scratches. I mean, like you said before, you could make a selection on the wall, and you could say old cracked plaster wall or whatever. So those sort of things. There you go. This place is a real mess.
The way I would approach it is to just go create greasy textures as flat textures in Midjourney or even in Photoshop,
Right.
And then put them in perspective so that I could put them on the walls that I want them on, and then selectively apply them. I don't want them on the glass, but just on certain parts of the walls.
Yeah. So you can see this looks
that's
more
cool.
cartoonish, right? So the prompt that generated it made it look less photographic, but you could go back in and do it. But this is the result of running the sort of reverse prompting, and that was number one. So so this guy's name might be what generates that image, right? So if I were to do it again, and in this case maybe take his name out of the mix, so then that might be the thing that's making it look more cartoonish, and then start, and like it did in the other one, it actually put in using more photo cues, photorealistic, and you can also put in lens dimensions and sizes and all that too. But let's just see, if I just change just that one thing, will it take out the cartoon look and maybe end up doing something more realistic, or more photographic than painting looking?
So that's interesting, that the comment to go into Midjourney and generate your own stains just as something you generate and then drop that into a part of it. Even
Yes.
that's interesting.
Yep. Yeah. You could do that. Yeah.
I've been doing that a lot.
Yeah.
Like if I want, I can't get the Midjourney prompt to do what I want it to do. Like I was trying to generate cubism in the style of Paul Klee or somebody, and I couldn't get it to do it, but I could get it to do a flat cubist texture that I was able to apply in Photoshop that gave me more of the feel of what I was trying to do.
Wow. Cool.
So I don't know, these look
Look at
more
that.
photographic, but again, there's a lot of videos and things that you can reference, and that Phil Still thing that I was looking at, because he's a photographer and he's more interested in generating photographic looking images. He has a lot of sort of prompt cues that you can use to force it to become more photographic, and but
Yeah.
could be cool. I mean, it's an interesting idea, and I think when they did that, being able to reverse engineer the image and back into prompts is an interesting way of learning about.
But from my point of view, I think this could be pretty powerful in terms of picking backgrounds to match objects
Yes.
with colors and that colors and palettes and things.
Yep.
Could be really useful for my doing.
Yep. Yep, absolutely. Yeah.
Thank
Yeah.
Yep.
All right. So let's go back here. So any other comments for? Let's go ahead and select all three of them again. For Paul on any of this?
Yeah, I was curious. So, Paul, you wrote the software to break this thing apart.
Yes.
So, what language were you using?
Python.
Python. Okay.
Yeah, it's all handwritten. I've been working on it for about 4 years now. Yeah.
4 years.
Yeah.
Well, it didn't take him.
How many
Like I say, it didn't take him 4 years to write it, but he keeps perfecting it. I would say he's made some significant changes over the time that I've seen the program from beginning to where it is now.
I'm starting to trade some comments with a group called Playform.io, which I used a couple of years ago, another AI generating outfit. And I may be thinking about synthesizing the tiles now. Instead of taking them from the original photograph, use that to train a neural network and then generate a whole bunch of new tiles.
Huh.
So I'm thinking about that as well. That could be wild.
Yeah. Yeah, that sounds interesting.
Or it could be useless.
Or it could be useless. Yeah.
How many lines of code are in this program?
Oh, 2,000-3,000 probably, and everything. Yeah. One of the secrets though is Blender, which is a 3D virtual stage, and that's really made a big difference in these. So they're finally set up on a stage, and they're multiple layers.
What was the relationship with Blender?
Well, my program generates the tiles and where to put them, and they're usually this one is, I don't know, 7 or 8 layers deep, and then those are loaded into Blender, which is then put it on a virtual stage and lit with virtual lights, and those are also each have thicknesses. So
So then, so in Blender, then you can adjust the depth as well.
yes, I can slide things around. I can insert things. Like the windshield is put in behind the matrix, just as a piece of a photograph. Yeah, I can change the point of view that you're looking at it. I can do all sorts of things in Blender.
So your program breaks it into tiles,
Yes.
and then you create different sets of tiles, and then you put those on different layers in Blender and adjust the depth of where they're located in 3D space, and then add thickness and lighting.
Yep, you're catching on.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
takes a lot of steps.
I made a living as an engineer in aerospace doing CAD. So,
Yeah.
yeah, so it's, I'm familiar with working in 3D spaces, mathematical spaces.
I love you engineers. It's- because you guys, we have stuff like
But you
this.
got to remember, I don't have an engineering degree. My degree is in sculpture, a BFA in sculpture.
All right.
Oh, that
Doesn't matter.
even more powerful.
I'm
Yeah.
still intrigued by this idea. I love it when engineers become artists because they just make some amazing
Yeah.
stuff.
But mine's the other way around.
The artist who became an engineer.
I was an artist, and then I became an engineer.
Wow.
We're both dangerous.
Both dangerous. There we go. All right. Thank you, Paul. Very cool.
Thank
God, I
you.
always love seeing what you're doing. Mr. Greg Klempt. Let's see here. So, Greg, should I show the two side by side right away so they get a sense of?
Yeah, show
Okay.
the complete image. I'm
going to do them side by side so they can kind of at least see the parts. Then we'll look at the.
that's a good way to go. So the first piece of this was the giraffe head, and let me pull up the prompt here. I was not getting what I wanted at all, and I don't even remember what I was thinking at the time. It was probably 3 a.m. when I was doing this. But the prompt I wrote was, the giant giraffe is looking to the left and has very short legs like a corgi. There is a small African girl dressed in native African dress looking up at the giraffe in the style of surreal figurative wandering eye, greebles, point one, oil portraitures, spiky mounds, savanna with baobab trees, surreal cartoonish childlike illustrations in the style of Naoto Hattori and Mark Ryden, aspect ratio of 4:5.
Missed it by that much.
And yeah, I got these really awesome giraffes, but I never could get the girl to be part of it, and the character, and it completely missed the mark. But so the first image here was the central giraffe, and then I used the zoom out function on that to get the second image. And then the girl at the bottom.
So again, you say doing these
that,
these are being done in Mid-Journey.
This is all done in Mid-Journey, yes. The girl at the bottom, that prompt was blonde girl face Mark Ryden, who's one of my favorite surreal artists. And let's see.
Now, let me ask you this, because this is an interesting thing about using the styles of other artists. If I was, I'm not familiar with the style. If I was, would the girl painting remind me of one of his?
The caricature of the face, the roundness of the face and the eyes, very much are informed by his work, but his characters are usually younger than this, and the hair is much more photographic and wild than anything in his work, and all the ornateness of her clothes, the dress. I don't know where that stuff came from, but one of the things that I found with Midjourney is that it it is informed a lot by other things that I have generated. It is also informed by a lot of other things that other people have generated. So it tends to throw a lot of flowers in a lot of things that I ask for that don't refer to flowers. And even if I say no flowers, it still throws in flowers here and there.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's good, and sometimes it's really annoying.
Yeah.
And then so I got these wonderful faces, and I kept feeding these faces back in, doing blends of the beautiful faces with other things. And what I did was that the girl on the left, I fed that in and blended it back with the giraffe, and I got the one in the bottom right-hand corner. So that matched the sort of the style, some of the ornamentation, and the character of the giraffe piece. So then if you go to the full...
Let me ask you something before we go into that. So the
Sure.
giraffe in the upper left, and then the one to the right of it, the one to the right of it was made simply by doing zoom outs, but did you add any more prompts to it, or just simply a zoom out?
Nope.
That's amazing
Straight
that
zoom.
it automatically put in
Yeah.
the human arms and the body and the hands. That's...
And I did a lot of variations to get to that point.
Wow.
This was one out of probably 16 different variations.
These are incredible, Greg. Did you like on this one, did you combine two different sides, or did the app create two different, slightly different but matching sides?
Oh, the left and right side, you're saying?
But yeah, left and right. They're not identical duplicates, which is cool.
It actually, if you just look at this,
Yeah.
they're very, very close. Oftentimes at the edges when you do a zoom out, and I usually do a progressive zoom out, so I'll do, instead of zooming out 2 times, I'll do 1.5 and then 1.5 and then 1.5. And then with that, you can...
I'm just going to find a... So on the image
show
here,
those-
here's the zoom outs.
And you can do a custom zoom,
Right.
so you could do just 1.2 or something like that. But I found that I get closer results if I do a 1.5 and progressively do that, because more of the percentage of the zoom out is referred to the original image.
Yeah. That's interesting.
So then taking that, so sometimes out at the edge of that original one, it'll generate some other slightly different stuff, but it's pretty much the exact same image. And now what happens when you do the zoom out is your original image was 1024 pixels. The new image is 1024 pixels. And each time you zoom out, you're degrading the quality of
The interior.
the central camera.
Yeah.
So I kept the original image, and once my process is, I use Midjourney, and then I use Gigapixel to upscale it 4 times, and then I put it in Photoshop Beta. So my pictures are 4,000 to 6,000 pixels wide, or in this case they're square, so it's 4,000 and something pixels. But then I took the giraffe face and I pasted it in the original 1024 pixel giraffe, and it gave me more detail in the face of the giraffe. And then I used the generative fill. So before I put the girl in here, I used the generative fill in Photoshop to add to the right side of the picture. And it did a really good job of copying the style of these weird fungal creature things. And so when I use the generative fill on something like this, I use the crop tool to widen the image to the right, and then I just selected that whole new area and I did a generative fill. Now that's really low resolution because 4,000 pixels high.
Mhm.
But then I progressively went into the spots that looked bad and added more generative fills, so that I probably did 15 or 20
Uh-huh.
different fills in there to get more detail into that area. And I went in and cleaned up the sky, and I did some other fills in the lower left-hand corner, and then with the girl, I had her in a separate file, and I added on to her body down the bottom half of it,
Uh-huh.
and
Yeah.
that took it did a wonderful job of generating some
Yeah.
different dresses, and I combined a couple of the different variations of that, and I had to do a lot of cleanup, and there's still stuff that I want to do in the shading of it. And then I took the giraffe face and I stuck it on her belt buckle, or on that thing on her belly,
Uh-huh.
and there's always more to do on these things, but I'm really happy with the way that the two different images integrated, and I've got a lot to clean up in different corners of this thing.
Well, Greg is definitely the guy I'm talking about, putting this tool into the hands of somebody who's creative and figuring out, some amazing things to do with this stuff. And I love the laboring that it takes to get to this point, because it just slaps everybody else back in the face who says, this is just a machine creating an image for you. And it's so much more. It can be, right, if somebody just goes and takes a prompt and boom, they're done. But this is so much more than just letting a machine create an image for you.
Yeah, and I've been so obsessed with it the last 3-4 weeks. I'm up till 3 in the morning almost every night.
Yeah.
Trying all these different things, and some of it is garbage, a lot of it is garbage, but I've been feeling like the more I work with it, like everything, like Photoshop filters, like digital photography, like every single thing I've done over the last 40 years of playing with digital art, it's you have to play with something for a lot of hours to get a feel for it, and then start to own the process to where it comes back. I am not this good to generate this kind of stuff by myself, but it feels like mine.
Should.
It feels like my work, and the more that I work on it, and the more that I integrate pieces and I add to it, and I start crafting little pieces of it, the more it takes on the feel of what I wanted to do. And there's still a lot of accident in it. There's still a lot of experimentation. There's a lot of taking those things and curating what is most interesting to me, what feels like my work, and it's still not fully my work, but the more I work it, a photograph to me is not my work either. It's the work of whatever scenery. When I take a snapshot, sometimes I'm involved in it, but I've never felt the same kind of relationship with photography as I do with making this kind of art.
Mm-hmm.
So this is really more of a full immersion of my creative path, and just continuing to try to suss out what feels more
Very cool.
natural to me.
Larry, do you remember us talking about bringing Greg in to throw rotten eggs at this process on that AI panel that we put together?
Yeah, no, and
Now look at
just to totally, reiterate, my motivation for this is to bring the people together who are moving forward with this rather than being afraid of it. And there's just, I think, so much potential here that's just going to continue to get bigger and better and bigger. And I was so excited by the idea. I mean, the first time I saw Midjourney and I started working with it, right away, my first comment was, "Oh, this is in Photoshop in no time at all," because it was such an amazing tool that I just couldn't see it not being a part of Photoshop. And it was like so quickly now it's shown up there, and it's still sort of in its infancy as far as what Photoshop is going to do with this technology. And I just, it's so exciting to see. I think some of the stuff that Greg was talking about, I mean, some of the zoom outs that happen in Mid-Journey are great, but I also think some of that, when you're adding canvas on and doing the generative fill in Photoshop, it does such an amazing job to that same process too of adding on information.
And just one other comment on this is all of the generative fills that I did, none of them have prompts in them.
Yeah.
It's all selecting an area, and it does a wonderful
Yeah.
job of copying texture style.
Yeah, these little
And you
weird microbial things or whatever they're in the background.
Yeah.
I just love it when
So Greg, you deserve to show a distinction gallery in Escondido.
there you go. All
They
those
they have a lot of painters that have this kind of look with the girls and the eyeballs and all that stuff. So there's a built-in taste for going in this direction, but this is totally unique compared to what they have there, and it's at least as good, if not better. And so you might want to take a look at distinction and you want to make a proposal.
I'm familiar with the place. I had looked at. I tried to get in a show there years ago, probably 10 or 12 years ago or something, and got nowhere with it. But yeah, I didn't know whether they were even still there.
Huh.
But yeah, I think that's maybe an appropriate venue if they'll take AI.
Oh, absolutely. Melissa's married to a guy who's a VP of engineering at an AI company in San Diego.
Bless her heart.
So you may, yeah. So you may have it in there, but this is really good work in general. I mean, I'm really impressed by what you're doing, and but I think it's better than a lot of stuff that is showing there and has had shows there. I think you're really onto something. I'm very, very impressed by this.
But
Thank
at
you
the
very
same
much.
time, you're very threatening to the painting world. This is cheating. This is cheating. Yeah, amazing.
Yeah.
And I love this again. Sort of, I think some of the things that we had done on the panel discussion too. About the. And in fact, I think Greg even used the term. About AI mimicking human trait. Human whatever we're feeding to it. And the question came up about well, can the machine be creative? And I'm like, every time I see this shit, stuff that's happening in this background, all this, I go, man, this feels pretty damn creative to me. And maybe, yeah, I could reference an image maybe where this kind of stuff exists. But I'm so many times just blown away by what it does. And it's such an amazing collaborative process. And I still think that there's something that to hang on to, I think, in that mentality that, like Greg said, constantly trying to make sense of this thing and making it feel like it is me and mine, and definitely this kind of this level of interaction with the machine definitely starts to put more of you into the process. And that same argument was there when photography came around, was that it's a machine making an image. And I watched a video the other day of it was a video on Ansel Adams, so obviously a while ago, but it was a BBC interview, and when he brings out the point that he began as a musician and then also started doing photography, and at one point did them both at the same time, the guy says, well, so how did you decide that photography would be your chosen path rather than playing the piano? And he said, well, I was constantly reminded by friends and family members that the camera will never be able to express your soul the way music does. He said, thank God I didn't listen to him. But You know, it's that again, the idea that it was this feeling that, yeah, photography is just a machine. And then, of course, when it became digital, then now it's just the computers doing all this shit. And now AI has even, pushed it further into that realm. But I'm, needless to say, thoroughly excited about where we're headed with this. It's fantastic. I think about the few things that I've done and things like what Greg's just done, and anybody that's worked with this. These things would not exist if this process was not available. They wouldn't happen, just on their own. And so there's definitely this collaborative process with a machine and with a program and engineering and all the stuff that went into making all this possible. It's just phenomenally exciting. So there.
Thanks, Greg, for the Mark Ryden. I was not familiar with this artist, but your stuff is so much better than his.
Well, thank
Thanks
you
for improving on it.
That's high praise, because he's my favorite artist of all time, I think.
But
I'm going to look into him some more.
I think also that this kind of also plays off of that, old adage about the idea, that we end up where we are by standing on the shoulders of the giants who came before us, and the idea that we're able to evolve, from those things. I mean, that's one of the arguments right now about stealing styles. But the thing is styles are not something that you can copyright anyhow. So other painters are constantly copying other painters' styles. It's just funny that we assume that we all work in a vacuum, and then therefore the machine should also not have access. But nobody works in a vacuum, except for.
While you were talking there, I figured out all those little globule things are those are the style of Naoto Hattori, the Japanese artist who paints these small, like 6-inch square oil paintings.
Wow.
On panel. And all the creatures that I had seen of it are these little round creatures with one round eye in the middle of it. So they didn't do eyes on all of this, but those seem to have come from that motif.
And that's another thing that I've heard a lot of people talk about, in terms of the prompting and creating, is this ability to be able to bring together kind of like two styles that may be either similar or totally dissimilar to create a brand new style out of those kind of two people, names that you might feed into the prompt, or even more so. So yeah, creating new style completely.
The blend feature is really pretty amazing to play with. I took some of the cubist stuff that I generated were these really sort of fractalized, geometric, three-dimensional textures, and they look kind of like Paul's car. They have that three-dimensional texture, and I blended those backgrounds with some of the pretty faces, and ended up with this amazing set of images that has these very mechanical, three-dimensional, cubic backgrounds with the softness of these faces in it. And
so I've pulled it
really
mid-journey.
how-
So the /blend, it gives you a chance to put in 2 images, and then once you've done that, you can actually add 4 more. So you can actually still blend together 6 images using this process inside of Midjourney.
Yeah, I think it's 5 images plus a ratio, aspect ratio.
Oh, really? So
I've never
Well, it
gotten
says-
the dimensions thing to work properly. It all ends up generating a square for me.
yeah.
Or I sent you a message.
Okay. I got your other one, but I can't get those images to copy out of there.
Oh,
It just keeps saying copy file name. I don't know why it does that. So we'll see.
No
We'll
problem.
see. All right. So any sort of last minute comments or questions for Greg? Thanks a lot.
The only thing that was kind of bugging me is under her the giraffe lady's arm, there's way lighter than,
Oh, in the background.
yeah. I would
Yeah.
either lighten up around the outside or darken the underarms, but that's the only critique I have.
It's interesting. There's a whole lot of lighting. The way my screen is calibrated, I'm seeing a whole lot of stuff that's lighter and darker that
Oh,
I
okay.
don't
Yeah.
see on my normal monitor. So I see a lot of need to recalibrate my monitor.
Yeah, well,
And,
I wouldn't say I'm totally confident that the GoToMeeting is actually throwing out there a completely color accurate, contrast accurate image. I mean, that's always
Yeah, but it does amplify
Yeah,
some
right.
of the issues that make
Right,
it there. So
yeah.
But there is a light source behind the giraffe, and that's just reflection on
It
the
could
water.
be, yeah,
there.
right. You're right.
Yeah.
Yeah. But
Yeah, I was just thinking either make it extend a little bit farther beyond her arms.
one of the things I like to
Yeah.
use in a critique is be careful of logic because sometimes again you'll go, oh yeah, wait a minute, it could just be reflecting this bright light back there, but visually it's still distracting. So it's like, yeah, logically I might be able to make it feel like, okay, that's why that's there, but maybe it would still be better to darken it or lighten the edges. But good point, Judy.
This is right out of Greg's dreams.
Yeah.
thank you for the comment.
Sometime I'd like to see Greg's cubist stuff. That'd be
Yeah,
cool.
yeah.
Yeah, that'd be really nice.
So speaking
It's
of
beautiful work.
speaking of dreams, so I've been working on this image for a while, and actually totally, I had shared it once with another. I think Don Fike is in part of our image critique night that we do through the museum, and an earlier version that I did. Everything in here is completely different from the original version, but I couldn't get the other one to work, so I just said I'm starting over. And so the interesting thing is, and actually kind of inspired by Greg and Paul's thing, I thought, well, I'll go ahead and show the process from sort of where it came from each image. But first, I'll say, so this image is part of a series that I've been working on for years. It plays off of my agnostic point of view in life, I guess. That is sort of about this sort of character person. And I kind of took these cues from Robert Park Harrison, who did that Architect's Brother series a long time ago. And he became the character, he as more or less became a self-portrait more. He and his wife worked together on the photographs. So if you haven't seen Robert Park Harrison's Architect's Brother's work, he has a whole book of it. They're all photo composite stuff, but he does them all using paper negatives, which means all of the images are blown up to size and inverted and contact printed back. And his wife had done some painting and drawing on the actual back sides of the paper and creating clouds and things. It's just amazing, their whole process, what they got. But in his design he has this suit that he wears, basically a black dress suit that's kind of too small for him. And it's gotten beaten up over the years, but he kind of plays this everyday man character in a post-apocalyptic world. And these scenarios that he creates from this, they even build sets and items that become part of the photo process. So I kind of like that idea of a reoccurring character. And so I haven't used the same photo of the character, but still this sort of robed, hooded sometimes character that is in this series of work. And the series of work is titled Wish I Knew, which I call the agnostic's prayer. Is this thing, it's sort of a tongue-in-cheek concept of, there's no way to know, but the wish I knew kind of plays off of that. So this image I kind of dreamed fully with the title. It was called No Way Home, which again plays with the agnostic thought of, is there really life after death? Is there going to be any way home for the agnostic? So this idea of the guy on the shore finding his transportation in flames, feeling somewhat dejected. So anyhow, I'll go through the pieces. So the original piece started with a photo from Pismo Beach Workshop. And all of these pieces, I've decided again in this collaborative process of doing them as photo composites, but also using my own images as a part of it. It doesn't have to necessarily be the background, but different elements of my own photographs mixed together with AI images. And so, in using this image, I didn't like the idea that the landmass was there because it doesn't kind of give that sort of distant feeling. So I first removed the landmass from the image, generated the character inside of Midjourney. And the problem I had before was I wanted to have some sort of rim lighting that would reflect not only the sunset, but some of this light that would come off of the fire. And my other image, I just couldn't get it. Well, this one kind of came out pretty cool. I just had to flip it so that the rim light was on the left side rather than the right side. So that character was taken, that's on the beach here, was taken from the Midjourney image. The symbol that's on the back of the material here was one also that was generated by Midjourney. I asked it to generate a symbol that meant hope, which again plays off of the idea of the character, and it generated several versions of them, but they all seem to have this sort of symmetrical pattern to them. And when I looked it up, I'm trying to find these. I couldn't find anywhere where these symbols actually exist or any true meaning behind them, other than that the butterfly came up as a symbol of hope. And so I kind of thought maybe that's where it came up with this idea of creating this symmetry, kind of like a butterfly does. So I inverted the image, and then using some blend modes and things and different ideas, as it appears on the back of the material here. And that's been a common element too in each of the images where he appears. I couldn't get a decent boat on fire, but I wanted this sort of disheveled boat anyhow. I got several boats that had flames on them, but I didn't like the way they came out. And then also, now that Photoshop has this ability to circle a space in the image and then prompt and tell it what you want to fill that space with, I just put the boat in. And the great thing is that, because it pays attention to the lighting in the image, and it pays attention to the color values, and it also blends it in perfectly seamlessly with the other water that's there. So I went ahead and generated the empty boat inside Photoshop using generative fill. And then the flames were generated with so call it the fire filter. But there's a filter inside Photoshop where you can generate flames. You basically create paths and you generate these flames. This is several things put together. And then again, using generative fill to create the reflection on the water of the flames. And then the whole thing is composited together to create here. And I created the sun wasn't even in the image here, but I ended up creating the sun value by just creating a curve with a mask. So I feel like it's done. It's always one of those things when you're doing composites, you can always think of one more thing or fix one more thing, but there it is. So the No Way Home is the image. So
why did you not put any smoke on it, Larry?
Because it's just blazing right now. I don't know. I just felt like it either didn't occur to me, or even when you say that now, I go, I don't. Some of the images, I have a whole folder full of boats on fire, and some of them do have smoke coming off of them too. So, every campfire doesn't have a smoke problem, but
it's a gas grill doesn't have.
There you go. That's how they started the fire on the boat. But good comment.
Depends on the purity of wood and how hot it's burning.
There you go. Again, we'll use some logic.
I love the concept. I really like there's a whole story and idea behind it, and it's a wonderful example of how you've used these different pieces to, using your own work and using the generative fill to make a real complete image.
That's
really
been
idea.
for me. Again, like I said, go ahead, Judy.
Did you use a distortion map or whatever to put that logo on his back?
Displacement mapping.
Or-
Yeah.
Or displacement
Yeah.
map is what I meant to say.
Yep.
Yeah, cool.
And
It's the way it goes into the
and in
wrinkles.
addition to
Yeah.
that part of the process too is that the again some blend modes, and then physically going in and dodging and burning some of the highlights, and they're added more to the dimension too. So that was kind of a
Looks great.
yeah. I was actually surprised because I've done several things with displacement mapping and have felt like okay, it's all right, but for some reason this one seemed to really come together well. So happy with it. So
I like the idea of the boat being both a way to go home, but also at the same time it feels like almost a funeral boat at the same
yeah,
time.
somebody mentioned
That's what
that
it
too.
looked to me.
Yeah, like the Viking funeral fire and
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
yeah. But back to the like Greg's comment. That for me that was like when the Photoshop thing happened. With being able to do now some of the things directly on the image, made the process for me even more exciting. This idea of being able to make it create things within your own photograph, and again, this kind of for me goes back to, this concept of that. It's not all about writing a prompt and getting a final image and you're done. It's like only one stage or one part of the whole process as you put it together. And there's things here. I'd mentioned to somebody when I did the first version, I said, the idea that I had about this idea of the burning boat and all that, I said, if I was going to actually use all my own pixels, it would take, quite a, getting a permit to actually get a boat in the water and set it on fire and have the fire department there so it doesn't get out of control. To shoot something like this would cost a lot of money. And the idea that you can make these things happen and still have them feel very photographic, and then it starts to ask or beg that question about I mentioned to somebody, it was this idea like if it walks like a duck and quacks like a duck, it's no longer a duck anymore because they're not your pixels. I go, this idea that if we're trying to make something look like a photograph, and for all intents and purposes in the end it feels photographic, then what is it? And like I said, that Phil Still and some other people have been using the term synthetic photography, which is an interesting twist on the idea. So it almost, to me, in the end, doesn't even matter what we're going to call it. My answer or my question has been before when I've heard this about other processes. I go, okay, it's a photograph. It's not a photograph, but is it art? It's like, does it have to fit into any subcategory of art for it to have any validity to it? And, photography is just one aspect.
Well, Larry, this is your creation, and AI will never repeat it.
Probably, well, until I post it online, and then it scrapes my website.
Oh. Right.
Yeah. No,
Will never be exact.
I even made that comment in my presentation that if I could prove that AI went into my website and trained off of some of my images, I would be so proud to be a part of having a hand in what this thing has become. I don't think I'd be pissed about it at all. So somebody had said,
Right.
Somebody shared with me a Warhol image that the estate now, got sued for because he used a photograph from another photographer and turned it into one of his, Warhol things. And somebody said, yeah, finally, somebody gets their up and comings for something, being stolen from them. And I go, they were like, aren't you excited to see that a photographer, wins in court? And I go, I don't know. Once again, if he had stolen one of my images and Warholized it, I would have been like, well, yeah, that's really cool. I got a Warhol creation out of one of my photographs. I just don't. I'm not that upset about the I, me, mine part of the world. Yeah.
There was a case where it was actually, it was a real financial, it was a direct ripoff.
It was.
I overlaid the two
Yep.
images, and it was perfectly everything was exactly in the same place. So he traced it, and he did it in his own style, and he made a lot of money off of somebody else's image, and that hurt the other person's income. So I mean, we do have systems for taking care of that, but it's only for the people who make millions of dollars that can afford the lawyers. And I think for, most people, find a lot of different ways to make our livings. And if somebody uses my art or takes my style, I think I'm flattered, and fortunately I don't have to make a living off of, every image that I sell.
Yeah, I doubt that there were really any damages to the original photographer. I mean, I don't, it's like, yes, it was her image. In some ways, I would almost think that it ups the value of her original image by making a reference to the Warhol image. And I don't, it's like now that it's gone through court and it's now become a huge story, it's almost like, wow, now her original image might be worth more money, that it has this historical attachment to Warhol. So it's interesting.
Awesome.
I mean, these same things happen in music and all kinds of things all the time. And
Well, Rauschenberg, same thing happened to him, and he won his cases in court, and he established a defense fund for artists that appropriate images to make their piece.
Interesting.
So there's a fine line there.
Yeah. I think I told the story before about this one folk guitar guy that we'd followed for a while, his music and stuff. A friend of mine introduced me to him, and then I saw his son had done a TED talk, and his son had become a musician also, but like sort of the total opposite of, like we always do, the opposite of who his father is. So his father's this folk musician telling these folksy stories. The son becomes a sampler, and he's down in the basement sampling music and mixing things together to create something new from something old. And the son finds out one day that some rap guy's being sued for stealing the drum beat off of somebody else's song, and he comes up to his dad and he goes, "Dad, is this true? This guy's being sued for being creative?" And I always liked this idea that he saw it in this way, right? That he just like, wow, he just did something very creative, but now he's being sued for it. This is the last image I have of the night, unless I'll pull up the thing here to show Kaz what's going on, and maybe he can tell me. So when I go, and can you tell me what we should be seeing from this? So if I go to your email, I get these two options. I'm assuming the Mac is just for conversion reasons.
Yeah. And you can't see them.
When I click on them, they just say copy file name. I don't get a download, or if I right click on them, they don't do anything. Double click on them, I don't get anything. And they're,
Looks like they came off.
They should be JPEGs.
yeah, and I can't expand it to even see what's hidden in here if it actually loaded as a JPEG. They're very small, 127 kilobytes. Were they really that small?
Probably not.
So something else might have happened in the uploading process. Yeah, all I get is a copy file name for some reason.
Yeah, it was just a series of things I did on Midjourney using the lyrics from the King Crimson song and the Court of the Crimson King. And I just used those as prompts, and it generated some. I thought they were interesting.
That's a great idea. Yeah, it's funny.
I enjoyed it.
I've used for years.
I put them on Facebook.
Oh, okay. Let's see if they'll come up.
I mean, if you go to Facebook, you go to my page.
All right.
On Facebook, you can see there's an album in there. Let's see, let me go to Facebook just to help you find it.
Looks like that was the directory of the files in a zip file.
Uh-huh. Yeah, it said something about a zip file, but I don't see the zip file anywhere. All right, so...
Yeah, that's what I emailed you, was a zip file. That's what I tried to email you.
All right, so where would they be in here? Under photos?
Yeah, my photos, albums. And then there should be an album there called In the Court, I think.
All right, that looks like it.
let me now. Of course, now I need to get back
Oh yeah.
to your video.
Wow.
Where did now I can't hit now. There we go. There we go. Okay, so the first one is I just put in the Court of the Crimson King, and I got these two trolley-looking guys, and the king that it produced was a trolley-looking guy too, and I just didn't like that, so I did another one with the king, Crimson King, and I got a series of different kings. I chose that one to be the best one, and then I photoshopped it, cut it out, and put it on top of the images with the trolls. Now, if you look at the chair behind the king, there's one chair, and yet the chair underneath his arms on the armrest is a different chair. You wouldn't know that had I not told you.
Yeah, no, I wouldn't.
But so I cut that out. So that one doesn't apply to the lyrics. That's just the title of the song, In the Court of the Crimson King. If you go to the next image, you can see the lyrics over here. The rusted chains of prison moons are shattered by the sun. I walk a road, horizons change, the tournament's begun. Now, this one, because it was a prison moon, the original image didn't have this picture of the Earth in the background. So I photoshopped it in so it would look like we're on a moon for a planet. And so that's to make it look like a prison moon.
Wow.
And then the next one is the purple piper plays his tune, the choir softly sings, 3 lullabies in an ancient tongue for the court of the Crimson King. And so I fed that in as a prompt, and one time I got the piper on the left, another time I got the choir, and I just said, well, let's put them both together.
Wow. That is bizarre.
Yeah.
The purple.
I love it.
And then the next image, the keeper of the city keys puts shutters on the dreams. I wait outside the pilgrim's door with insufficient schemes.
Wow, this is great.
Wow.
Amazing.
And this is a wonderful song. If you guys, I don't know, maybe you guys know it.
One of my favorites.
And then this one, the Black Queen chants the funeral march. The cracked brass bells will ring to summon back the fire witch to the court of the Crimson King.
Wow.
There you go. I really like. I like this one because it reminds me of Hindu statues. You know, because it has that wild crown of. And then the black, skin.
Yeah. Wow.
Now I thought it was a pretty powerful image. The gardener plants an evergreen whilst trampling on a flower. I chase the wind of a prison ship to taste the sweet and sour. and Midjourney's generating all these just off of these. These are the prompts.
That's amazing.
The lyrics of the song. Next, if you want. The pattern juggler lifts his hand. The orchestra begins as slowly turns the grinding wheel in the court of the Crimson King.
I mean, to me, this is proof. This is proof that AI is not creative.
On soft gray mornings, widows cry. The wise men share a joke. I run to grasp divining signs to satisfy the hope.
Wow.
Wow.
And look, it even created a weird depth of field in the image too, forward and backward.
Yeah.
Right. Wow.
The yellow jester does not play, but gently pulls the strings and smiles as the puppets dance in the court of the Crimson King.
Jesus. That's amazing. Look at this.
And then this is just Robert Fripp. I said Robert Fripp. I can't even remember what the prompt was, but I and they did a really good job of Robert Fripp. That looks like Robert Fripp. You know, he doesn't dress like that. He doesn't. That guitar is not really something that he would play.
And he hasn't gotten that old yet.
Yeah. Well, he is pretty old.
He is pretty old.
And then there's a little yellow, puffy looking.
Pulling strings or something.
Yeah, I don't know what those. Pulling on strings like little flying. Those marshmallow things you buy and eat.
Yeah, those. What are they called?
Birds.
The peeps. Yeah, the little yellow peeps.
Yeah.
That's funny. Oh, that's the end.
Yeah,
of
I
it,
commented on your Facebook page that it was his early Frippertronics rig.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, that's incredible. I'm glad we were able to see him now. That's amazing. Yeah, when you first started talking about these lyrics, it was funny because a long time ago when we were doing some workshops and things and just in conversation talking about, creativity and how sometimes we get, stumped for an idea or the whole writer's block idea and the artist has the same problem. But, where can you sort of look for that inspiration for creativity? And I've always said, like, God, song lyrics can be like an amazing thing that could spark ideas. Poetry, just titles off of books I've used before. I have a couple of images. I have one book, it's a book on Buddhism, but it's called Tying Rocks to Clouds. And I thought, God, that's such a beautiful image. So I ended up creating an image that was kind of based on this idea. But this is so great to like feed lyrics to Mid-Journey and see what it does. I mean, that's just...
Well, what made me do it is, when I look at Mid-Journey, it's got this style. And the style of Mid-Journey that I see so much of reminds me of the lyrics of that song.
Wow.
So that's what gave me the idea. I said, well, why don't I just feed the lyrics in the Mid-Journey and, it'll create its thing that'll look like the song. So I thought it was a good match.
Yeah.
To put those two together. That's
I
why
love
I did
the
it.
keys.
Oh.
Lyrics by Pete Sinfield.
Pete Sinfield, that's right.
That album changed my life. It changed the whole way I thought about music.
Wow.
Big wave.
This is bizarre. I mean, it's like it always has this thing, where it gets nervous about creating some kinds of images. And I go, then here's these two weird naked trolls sitting next to the throne.
Yeah, and if I would have prompted
Yes,
naked trolls, it would not have done anything.
Exactly. Yeah.
I thought the prompt was like really cranky old man. Naked.
The king's cranky cousins.
That would have created a picture. If I would have prompted that, it would have put a picture of me in it.
Self-portrait. Kaz Maslanka.
Really great.
Cranky old man.
All right.
So say the name of the song again and who it's by?
In the Court of the Crimson King.
But who's that song by?
King Crimson.
Oh, King Crimson. Right, okay. Great lyrics.
Yeah.
All the poets of the world are going to have to get together with the artists now.
If you look up anything by Pete Sinfield, he's got amazing poetry.
Oh, cool. Okay.
He wrote a lot of really weird and wonderful songs in the 70s, 80s.
All right. Well, thanks everybody who shared images tonight. And on top of that, thanks everybody who hung out to the very end. And we will be back again. Let's see, what is our next date? It's going to be September. Come on. Doesn't want to go to September. September 28th. So there will be an announcement. Also remember, we always use the same link, so if you can save it somewhere, that's great. Otherwise, I mean, it does, if you go to the meetup site and go to the event page, the current event should be there, and the link is almost, not almost always, will always be inside the announcement there too. All right, so thanks everybody. Have a good evening.
Thank you, Larry.
Right.
Thank you, Larry. Thanks for everybody's sharing. It's been fascinating.
Everybody feels like, turning everything down and go smoke some pot in favor of the King Crimson Knight.
Start on from King Crimson.
We're supposed to wait.
All right. Thanks,
Larry.
Kaz.
Thank you, Larry.
Good
All
night.
right. Good night, everybody.
Good night.
All right, everybody. Thanks for coming to DPX-AI tonight. And until we see each other next month, stay creative, be inspired, and be an inspiration to others.